Hi guys, so today I'm here to talk about my January wrap up. So let's just head straight into it. In the very beginning of January I picked up The Places I've Cried in Public. This was purely a cover buy to start with. I did read the back, however it was very vague. It just says it looked like love, it felt like love, but this isn't a love story. Now, I don't usually read contemporaries, purely because I'm not into a lot of lovey-dovey romances, which a lot of the time you tend to find in contemporaries. However, this also had a slight twist to it. And it also had a quote from Patrick Ness saying, "Holly Byrne is something special, she's got it." When I found myself reading further and further into it, I became more and more involved and more attached to Amelie. When she meets Reese, her world is turned upside down. She has just moved to a new town. She is just finding her feet in this new place, new school, new people. So when Reese appears and makes her feel like the most amazing, special girl in the world, she falls for it. Hook, line and sinker. However, we flip from timelines to things that have happened previously. Almost like a thought process. She decides to take a trip down memory lane and she calls it a memory map. As you move along to different places with her, she discusses what made her cry, the incident that made her cry. So we get to follow this young girl slowly falling in love with Reese. I have my own thoughts on Reese, and it wasn't good, but the way Holly Byrne has written this is, to me, perfect, because I found that I could 100% relate. The way that Reese was portrayed as a charming, sensitive boy who parents loved, teachers loved, he was perfect, he was amazing, he was gorgeous. You can completely see why Amelie would think nothing other than that. It is hard-hitting. It is quite literally a powerful, vital gut punch, as Laura Bates says. It really got me. I cried sad tears, I cried happy tears, I wanted to shout at the book sometimes, I wanted to throw it across the room. For me, this was fantastic. I think I gave it a 4 stars. It would have been a 4.5 for me, but obviously with Goodreads you can't do the half stars. The only thing that didn't quite get me there was there didn't seem to be any consequence for Reese, which, although for me that would have made it the 5 stars because it would have sealed everything off nicely, I do understand that keeping true to real life, a lot of the time consequences don't happen. So this was my first read of 2020 and I got off to such a good start. Excellent. Now, my second read was on Scribd. It was the second of the Lemony Snicket's series of unfortunate events, and it was the Reptile Room. Now, I'm not going to go too much into the series of unfortunate events because I'm sure that you've got some idea, whether you've watched this series on Netflix, whether you've watched the film, I'm pretty sure you've all got a rough idea of what happens. However, this was another quick listen for me. I think it was 2.5 to 3 hours. And again, it just, I don't know, it felt like with the first book, it was very much, you got thrown into this whole story of how these poor children had lost their parents and become orphans. They'd lost their house, they'd lost everything. And obviously everything gets built up in that first story. Something bad happens. Now in the second one, I understand that there isn't really many other places to go other than something bad will happen again. But it fell flat for me. It felt like it was just the same components of a story with different factors changed. I do understand that this is a children's book, and I can 100% understand that for children this is fantastic. This is really exciting. I think the writing is brilliant, and I really enjoyed listening to Tim Curry as the narrator. This was why I carried on. However, I don't think I'll be continuing the series. One, because script doesn't have them all, and two, I don't feel like I enjoyed the second enough to move on to the rest of the series. I enjoyed the first one, which is why I started on the second, but I don't think I'll be carrying on. I think I gave that 2 stars. Again, I think the reason it got the 2 stars is because the writing and the narration. I was looking at it from a audiobook point of view. It was a good listen. It was a quick listen. Just not something I'll carry on. My third read was actually Ruin and Rising by Leigh Bardugo. This is the 3rd instalment in the Grishaverse series. You start off with Shadow and Bone and then Siege and Storm, and finish off with Ruin and Rising. I have already said in the series that I need to finish in 2020 that I wanted to finish this to move on to Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I also pointed out that I really loved Shadow and Bone and hated Siege of Storm. I'd like to point out that these are just personal opinions, because I know that a lot of people either really disliked the entire trilogy or really enjoyed it. Ruin and Rising would have been a massive flop for me if it was not for Nikolai. He is my favourite character without a doubt. Again, I knew what was coming. It felt all samey. It felt like there was a big rush to finish this book. It felt like all I was doing was reading it to get to Six of Crows. If it wasn't for Nikolai being in this, I think I would have DNF'd it. It was much better than Siege and Storm, but still not as great as Shadow and Bone, and no. My next read, I feel like this is where things start to go seriously downhill, because I don't even know where to start with this. So, if you've been watching my vlogs, you know that I occasionally take part in some buddy reads, and a frequent buddy read is with Claire. I'll be linking her Instagram down below. She's just so funny. Her reading is so diverse, and there's new bits that I've picked up that I probably wouldn't have picked up in the first place. But The Language of Thorns is almost like a fairy tale book, for fairies. The way it is seen is that these stories are what the fae would tell their fae children, like fairy bedtime stories. To me, I really enjoyed the first story, and then all the others were just so long and quite boring. I really didn't know where to take it from. I read the first tale, I then sat there and thought, right, this is looking really good, let's move on to the next one. The motivation to pick this book up every night to read a tale before bed was just not there. And the longer I left it, the harder it got to finish this book. It took me a week to even move from the second to last tale to the final tale. And even then, again, it was another book where I just thought, I just want to finish it. It needs to go. Then I moved on to The Loneliest Girl in the Universe. Now these we follow Romy Silvers, who is on a spaceship, obviously in the middle of nowhere in space, and as we go through we find out that she was actually born on the ship, so she's never actually seen Earth, and she's never lived with anybody other than her parents and the few astronauts who were put into like a deep sleep, just to preserve them until they go to Earth 2. Now unfortunately Romy's parents pass away, and we find out the circumstances as we move further forward. But this means that Romy has been alone on the ship for the majority of her life. Now she has contact with a counsellor which is provided by NASA. She has occasional conversations with her and can even have audios. The only problem with this is that the distance between the ship and Earth means that the messages are received years later. So she's constantly waiting for that next message to not feel so alone. However, we are then introduced to Jay. And Jay is apparently on another ship which is on its way to help Romy and to help her get to Earth 2 and make sure that she is there safe and sound and they can continue a population on Earth 2. This isn't anything, there's nothing sexual to it. There is literally cases of eggs and embryos waiting to be born on Earth 2. This started off so strong. I really enjoyed the writing style. It was nice and fast paced, and I enjoyed the email to email flitting backwards and forwards between Jay and Romy and her counsellor, who I know her name begins with an M. Part of me wants to say Michelle, but I don't think that is it. Molly. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. However, again, when she receives a email to say that there is war on Earth and that this company has taken over NASA, I knew, guys, I knew where this was going. And then my head clicked and I was like, I know what's going to happen now. And I was right. My issue isn't the predictability, because again, I think this is leaning more towards the young adults. And also it was a nice way to edge into sci-fi for me. However, this ended up being really fast paced towards the end. I felt like everything was rushed. So we had the majority of the book, which took loads of time to build up how Romy was feeling, the type of girl that she is, and how she'd lived her life, learning the backstory of her parents' death and the death of the astronauts, and all sorts of other things that have happened on the ship during her life. We also then get to know Jay a bit, and we also start to feel the relationship developing between Jay and Romy, even though it's just via emails. So then when they finally get to meet, I was really excited. I was getting ready for some big scenes, and it just didn't happen. We had one big scene which ended very, very quickly, and I'm talking like the last 40 to 50 pages. Everything kicked off really quickly, and it was done and over with really quickly. I don't think I've rated this yet, because I am torn. I am really torn. I really enjoyed the writing style, as I said, and it was a good read, and it was very quick to read as well. However, it was just the ending for me. It just fell really flat. I was really disappointed because everything went so well. It was just a really disappointing read towards the end. My most recent and my final read of January, I literally finished this at 10 o'clock at night on January the 31st. Now, again, if you've watched my vlogs, you'll know that I have flitted between audiobook and physical reading for this one. One, because it was quite a big chunky book, but also because it was my final read of January, and I decided that I was just going to dedicate that last week of January to just this one book. This is The Binding. Oh my goodness. Now, I've heard a lot of mixed reviews on this one. I've heard a lot of people slate it and give it 2-3 stars. Not that there's anything wrong with 3 stars, there isn't. We first meet Emmett, and we find out that he is really unwell. The small comments between the other characters, who we find are his mother and father, they have a hidden meaning behind them. It is very, very easy to pick up on the fact that there is a secret to do with Emmett, and that Emmett's illness may not be as open and close as just a normal illness. Emmett also makes slight comments about the fact that he can't remember certain things before he became ill. His sister, Alta, is also extremely shifty when it comes to certain things, to the point where she even drops something and it breaks on the floor. Now, as we go through, it is very hard to explain things that are happening without giving too much away. I feel like this might be a 5-star read for me, and I'm not mad about it because I think it's a well-deserved 5 stars. As I said, I know that some people have rated it a lot lower, but I have spoken to Claire, who also buddy read this with me, and she said she wasn't 100% sure how people could rate it that low because she also enjoyed it thoroughly. I don't really know how I could have made this better. I don't know if I want to make it better, if I want any improvements or anything different. I just don't know. I really, really enjoyed it. So that was my final read for January, which I think was an excellent read to finish on because I was starting to feel so flat about the fact that I'd read so many awful books that I was expecting to be really, really good. So those were my reads for January 2020. Have you read any? Do you have any ideas on them yourself? Please let me know in the comments. If you've watched this and enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the like down below and subscribe if you haven't already. Bye!